Hello students, I am Nitish Bhushatti, working as an assistant professor in Government Women's First Grade College, Kalburgi. Today's video lecture is on the topic figurative language, which is lesson number 6 from unit number 2, reading poetry from the prescribed textbook Alliteration for BA first semester students studying in colleges affiliated to Karnataka State Akama Devi Women's University. As mentioned already, today's lecture will be a continuation of the previous video lecture on figurative language and will deal with paradox, pun, ambiguity, irony, allusion, alliteration, assonance, onomatopoeia and rhymes. This video lecture is for students studying in BA first year optional English. Before continuing with our lecture, a quick recap of the previous lecture. What is figurative language? Figurative language is language that is intended to create an image, association or other effect in the mind of the listener or reader that goes beyond the literal meaning of the expected use of the words involved. What are literary devices? Literary devices are techniques that are used to help the author achieve his or her purpose. Typically, these devices are used for an aesthetic purpose. That is, they are intended to make the piece more beautiful. We have also studied various literary devices in the last class, such as simile, metaphor, metonymy, synecdoche, personification, apostrophe, conceit, hyperbole, and understatement. And today, the first literary device which we are going to deal with is the paradox. A paradox is a statement that appears at first to be contradictory, but upon reflection then makes sense. This literary device is commonly used to engage a reader to discover an underlying logic in a seemingly self-contradictory statement or phrase. As a result, paradox allows reader to understand concepts in a different and even non-traditional way. In literature, paradoxes can usually be classified either as situational or rhetorical. For example, if characters find themselves in difficult to reconcile circumstances, this would be a situational paradox. Examples include, if you take the sentence, "This statement is a lie." This is the most famous of all logical paradoxes because it's so simple. These 5 simple words are self-contradictory. If the statement is true, then it's a lie, which means it's not true. But if it's not true, then it's a lie, which makes it true. So there is contradiction within these 5 words. And examples from literature would be, we have Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, and from that play we have these lines. Juliet, my only love sprung from thy only hate. Too early seem unknown and known too late. Prodigious birth of love, it is to me that I must love a loathed enemy. Shakespeare used many examples of paradox in his plays and poems, and this is one such example. The tragedy of Romeo and Juliet is based on a paradox. Juliet expresses it in this quote that her only love sprung from her only hate. It is expected that love should spring from hate to the extent that it seems impossible. However, the story of Romeo and Juliet shows the deep truth of love and hate. They are so irreconcilable after all. The next slide will deal with pun. A pun is a literary device that is also known as a play on words. Puns involve words with similar or identical sound but with different meanings. Their play on the words also relies on a word or phrase having more than one meaning. Puns are generally intended to make humorous, but they often have a serious purpose as well as in literary works. For example, if you were to attend the lecture about managing finances entitled Common Sense, this features a pun. The play on words is between sense as in coins and sense as in awareness or common sense. This pun is also effective as a play on words of the phrase common sense, which is appropriate to the subject of managing finances. Examples of fun would be the tallest building in town is the library. It has thousands of stories. The pun here is between difference between stories in books and stories or floors in a building. I can't remember which state my wife wanted to visit for our next vacation. It's okay, I will ask Alaska. Read the joke out aloud. Alaska sounds like I will ask her. The next slide will deal with ambiguity. Ambiguity is an idea or situation that can be understood in more than one way. This extends to ambiguous sentences, which could mean one thing or another, up to ambiguous storylines and ambiguous arguments. It is often viewed in a negative light since we value clarity in writing and ambiguity is the opposite of clarity. However, sometimes ambiguity can be a good thing, especially in poetry and storytelling. Ambiguity is similar to vagueness, except that ambiguity refers to something having multiple possible meanings, and vagueness refers to a general lack of clarity. Something vague might not have any clear meanings, while something ambiguous might have several possible clear meanings. An example of ambiguity would be the sentence, "The bark was painful." Here in this sentence, bark could mean a tree's bark was rough, or it could also refer to a dog's bark communicated pain or hurt the listener's ear. Next, we move on to irony. Irony is a contrast or incongruity between expectation for a situation and what is reality. This can be a difference between the surface meaning of something that is said and the underlying meaning. It can also be a difference between what might be expected to happen and what actually occurs. The definition of irony can be further divided into two main types, verbal and dramatic. Verbal irony. Verbal irony takes place when the speaker says something in sharp contrast to his or her actual meaning. The speaker often makes a statement that seems very direct, yet indicates that the opposite is in fact true or that the speaker really means. The example, the woman's giant dog insists on sitting on her when she relaxes on the sofa. The dog climbs on her and it says, "I'm so glad I have such a tiny little lapdog." A person finishes a huge meal only to have a friend show up with a pizza for the two of them to share. The very full person says, "Wow, perfect timing." Dramatic irony occurs when the audience has more information than one or more characters in the work of literature. The literary devices originated in Greek tragedy and often leads to tragic outcomes. For example, in Shakespeare's Othello, the audience is aware that Othello's best friend Iago is villainous and attempting to bring Othello down. The audience is also aware that Desdemona has been faithful. Though Othello doesn't know this, the audience can foresee the imminent disaster. Now we'll move on to the next literary device, which is allusion. Allusion is a brief and indirect reference to a person, place or thing or idea of historical, cultural, literary or political significance. It does not ascribe in detail the person or thing to which it refers. It is just a passing comment, and the writer expects the reader to possess enough knowledge to spot the allusion and grasp its importance in a text. For instance, if you make a literary allusion the moment you say, "I do not approve of this chaotic idea." Chaotic here means stupid and impractical, and is derived from Cervantes' Don Quixote, a story of a foolish knight and his misadventures. Examples of allusion. When we say he was a good Samaritan yesterday when he helped the lady start her car, the good Samaritan here is a reference to a story from the Bible. This place is like a Garden of Eden. Here the Garden of Eden is a reference to the paradise that God created for Adam and Eve. Now, next we'll move on to alliteration. Alliteration is a repetition of same consonant sound at the beginning of words which are in close proximity to each other. This repetition of sounds brings attention to the lines in which it is used and creates more oral rhythm. Consider the following examples. But a better butter makes a batter better, or a big bully beats a baby boy. Both sentences are alliterative because the first same letter of words B or B occurs close together and produces alliteration in the sentence. An important point to remember here is that alliteration does not depend on letters but on sounds. To take another example of alliteration, we have the play Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, wherein he says, "From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life." Shakespeare used alliterations very frequently in his plays and poetry. In his prologue to Act 1 of Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare uses alliteration of F sound of from, forth, fatal and foes. He uses the L sound in loins, lovers and life. In this alliteration example, the words beginning with the F sound are united with words of death and destruction, fatal and foes, with the words beginning with the L are all connected to the continuity of life, including loins and lovers. The alliteration thereby weaves the opposing images together. Next, assonance. Assonance is a literary device in which the repetition of similar vowels takes place in two or more words in proximity to each other within a line of poetry or prose. Assonance often refers to the repetition of internal vowel sounds in words which do not end the same. For example, "he fell asleep under the cherry tree" is a phrase that features assonance with the repetition of the long E vowel. Despite the fact that the words containing this vowel do not end in perfect rhymes, this allows writer the means of emphasizing important words in a phrase or line, as well as creating a sense of rhythm, enhancing mood, and offering a lyrical effect of words and sounds. An example of literature for assonance would be After Apple Picking by Robert Frost. "Stemmen and blossommen, and every fleck of russet showing clear." Robert Frost's poem contains assonance in the title with the repetition of the short sound in after and apple. The excerpt here also contains several short E sounds in quick succession, giving these two lines an extra sense of unity. Next, we have onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia refers to a sound that phonetically mimics or resembles the sound of the thing it describes. For example, the words we use to describe the noise that animals make are all onomatopic, such as a dog's bark, a cat's meow, or a buffalo or cow's moo. Common examples of onomatopoeia: the buzzing bee flew away, the sack fell into the river with a splash, the books fell on the table with a loud thump. Examples of onomatopoeia from literature. We have The Tempest by Ariel Shakespeare, where Ariel says, "Hark, hark, bow, bow, the watchdogs bark, bow, wow, hark, hark, I hear the strain of strutting chanticleer cry, cock-a-diddle-do." The character of Ariel in Shakespeare play The Tempest uses several examples of onomatopoeia in one short passage. The dogs bark and say bow wow, while the chanticleer cries cock-a-diddle-do. Shakespeare is thus using onomatopoeia of animal noises here. Towards the end, we come to the end rhymes and internal rhymes. Rhymes add a musical component to poems and make them easier to remember. They can also enhance the meaning. While many poems have rhyming words at the end of each line, some have rhyming words within the same lines instead. End rhymes occur when the last syllable of words in two or more lines rhyme with each other. It's also known as tail rhyme and occurs at the end of lines. The lines ending in similar sounds are pleasant to hear and give musical effect to the poem or song. This is called the end rhyme. An example would be Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. In this example, Frost has used end rhyme of the first, second, and fourth lines with the words no, though, and snow. These rhyming lines add flow to the piece and a pleasant effect to the poem. Internal rhyme is a rhyme that occurs in the middle of lines of poetry, instead of at the ends of lines. A single line of poetry can contain several internal rhymes with multiple words in the same line rhyming, or the rhyming words can occur across multiple lines. For example, of an internal rhyme would be I drove myself to the lake and dove into the water. Here, drove and dove are internal rhymes. Internal rhyme is not as popular as end rhyme, which creates a stronger sense of full rhythm of the line. That is, end rhyme signals to the ear or the reader that the line has come to an end and has sonic equivalence at the end of following line. Internal rhyme, however, can be a good way to connect successive lines orally without making a strong of impact. Internal rhyme example. The Rhyme of Ancient Marina by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The fair breeze flew and the white foam flew. The furrow followed free. We were the first that ever burst into that silent sea. In these lines, we have a few examples of internal rhyme. In the short excerpt, we can see that the internal rhyme in the first line blew and flew. We can also see internal rhyme in the third line is on the connection of the first and burst. Coleridge also uses more common device at end rhyme by rhyming the words free and sea. With this, we come to the end of the session on figurative language. Thank you.